looking fucking weapons. I know they're power weapons in the lore, which means they're not just a broadsword. But I like shit like this, the chain swords and the big guns and shit. This guy is what's called a librarian. He's basically a magic user essentially. They're psychers. They do mind tricks and stuff.
So you're gonna make them all to your world, though?
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be their their seat where they live. Yes, ma'am. You're going to live on the planet Moon. You're going to be a chapter on the planet Mund. But, yeah, you can just see in the art that different models come with different flourishes, like I was saying. And, like, the ones with the wings, which are fine and dandy, they're just, I got to figure out how to fix, like, not fix, but I want to change up these because there's little symbols there on the edge, on their pauldron, the little shoulder thingy there, that indicates that they're dark angels. You know, like it's a military coding. Like they're all, that's how you tell rank and things like that. And that's why, like in the book here, you see different examples of that. That's why I want to figure that out before I try getting anything near paints, is I want to figure out, you know, like their identity. And then I can work on what's, you know, their heraldry, basically, which is all significant. And within the context of the game, it really works, too, because, like, one of the tournament rules, if you go and play with other people, which is, you know, I feel more like I'm going to just collect and, like, host, like, have other, because I know I can get some of the guys, and who knows, maybe some of the kids at some point, to play if all the moving pieces are basically already taken care of. You know, it's a lot easier to get somebody to do something if you've already got all the shit in front of them, especially like Philip, you know, or even you, because it's not that difficult to learn. But right now I got to build a army, and in the game context, in the tournament context, you actually get points for having a completely fully painted army.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so that'll be a thing eventually. Right now, though, I want to work on composition, unit composition, which means what units can function according to the rules, because according to what's called the fluff, the lore, all these guys can hang out because they're all Space Marines in the end. And then Space Marines can hang out with Imperial Guard because they all serve the Emperor. And a couple other examples like that. But within the rules context, they actually have unit compositions where you take special elements and put them together to form like a new form, like another rules template. So it's unit composition. So I want to make sure that all of my units are playable with one another within the spectrum of doing things. You know what I mean? Like I want to make sure I'm able to take out all these Terminators when I want to take them out. These big guys here, they're special. They're extra tough. They're hard to kill. They got special rules. The bikes have special rules. This guy, originally I was going to completely, oh, I'll figure some way to fix him. But I think what I'm going to do with him is I've already given him, he's lefty. Just because his left arm is missing. And he's missing that gay Judge Dredd looking shield thingy with the wings. But that's what I'm talking about. I don't even necessarily need to cut this off. If I figure out what I want to do with it, I can just put another piece of plastic onto it. Or if I figure out whether I can use like soldering or whatever with them, maybe I can just melt it smooth or brand it smooth. So I'll figure that stuff out. But if the Dark Angels don't suck ass, I can make them like they came from the Dark Angels. And that'll mean that anything that applies to Dark Angels with the rules will apply to them if they're used. Yeah.
So what is this, Dungeons and Dragons?
No, this is Warhammer. Warhammer 40,000. It's a tabletop war game. But all that stuff meshes well enough for well. And my goal is I want to basically just make this big campaign like setting where it's a combination of all these little different elements and rule structures. It's called homebrewing. And it'll be like what I want to do with a game. Like what I want to play with a game. And what I really like the idea of doing is making my own game all together. And I've been putting little pieces here and there together. And I want it to be like a collectible card game type game, but that applies to tabletop wargaming and like role-playing. And so I've been looking at all these different systems and things like that, and I'm thinking of some pretty cool ways to get them intermeshed already, because it's not like the systems can't coexist. Like Warhammer 40k in and of itself uses cards, and you can make your own cards that just help as quick reference, rules reference, and things like that. So basically the idea is I want to make a game system, a modular game system, which means that has different components that you can extract or you can add to. It makes it easier for people to use. And I want the system to be set up so you can play this huge war game, but where all of the units, rather than being like, these guys are all Space Marines, what I want to do is make it to where the models you have aren't relevant. It's what you say they can do. So, like, say you have models from Warhammer, but you don't want to play Warhammer, and you want to play, like, different cool things. You want to use your models for other things. I want to make a system that makes it to where you can use your Warhammer 40k models, you can use your Dungeons and Dragons models. You just pick different keywords that will apply those rules to that model. So you can just play with with anything you want, with chess pieces if you want. And the idea is that eventually there'll also be cards and everything that will have its own fluff and lore. So you can play with the collectible cards that already exist, but there'll also be a rule system that you can apply in your own ways to make your own games.
Oh, my baby.
And that's all things that already exist. These are all things that people already do all the time. That, I've always kind of wanted to do. Like this, it's bringing all of my odd little things kind of together, like the world building stuff and this stuff and the role playing stuff. And I was just thinking, man, that's the kind of game I want. I want to play a game like that where it can be as big as Twilight Imperium, which is still in that box and weighs fucking 25 pounds. And the likelihood of me ever getting a game of that off the ground is pretty slim. But there's a reason for that, because it takes forever to play and yada, 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 yada. But there are games very similar to that take a lot of the heavier aspects of that and slim them down. And I think it would be neat if you could play a game on 3 levels that had one whole overarching thing. And the 3 levels would be, you'd have a system, a solar system, or like a map area, and you move around that and move your resources around that like a big game, like Twilight Imperium.
Well, I hate to say it, but our little shithead son who likes to swat everything off of everything.
I was thinking about that earlier today, that why did how was it that I didn't have these out and about and everything? And I don't know why, like...
It's because little guy would just swatted them off. He would say, "Oh, Dad, what's this?"
Yeah,
boom,
like
to the floor.
Made me think about how much of an asshole he was with those.
But it made me think just now, with a game like that, you want to just leave it set up, sitting somewhere so you can go back to it. And so you don't have to sit there for fucking 6 months straight. So you can just keep picking up where you left off. And why didn't we do that? Because our little shithead would have been swatting stuff all over the floor playing with it. So we could play it. We could set it up and we could just keep leaving it and keep a notebook so we know where we're at.
Imperium.
Yes.
Yeah, that's actually...
Yes.
Absolutely. Oh my God, it's so weird that you say that, because I was just thinking about that today. I was like, there is a rules variant for Twilight Imperium where you can play with 3 people. It just takes... It's the timing is just different.
But it doesn't matter how long, because we can just leave it set up.
Yeah.
And just keep going back to it. And you know what I mean? And just make sure nobody touches it. We could put it on the table. Just not put anything else on the table.
It's a good idea. It's a very good idea. That's what what I'm saying, like, because in my mind it'd just be really neat to play a game where you're in the space level of it, because I want my rule system to account for different what is commonly referred to as tech levels. I want my system to play where if you had a barbarian from this distant planet, everything about your military could be these barbarian people, and there'd be nothing stopping you from having an encounter what basically amounts to aliens. People playing on a, you know what I mean, on a different, so there'd be an overarching thing. So say like in a fantasy environment and then a sci-fi environment. This is 2 simple examples. Sci-fi would be a galaxy. Fantasy would just be this one world. But there'd be a world map or a galaxy map or solar system map or whatever that you would do certain things on. And then when you got into certain situations, you would play on an interactive table, like a regular table. And it would be either wargaming stuff, like with these guys, or you take the same figures you use for wargaming, special examples of them, like say this guy or this guy, and they would be like your hero figures. And you could play individual encounters, so you could role play with small squads of characters, and then you could you could do a mission where in order to take one part of this planet of the main galaxy in the map, you got to take this one planet. In order to do that, you have to put ground forces on it. But you play a special card that means that you can put a spy in there too. So now you go to the ground forces and there's a military encounter, but there's also a little side mission where you're playing on the individual character level as that special agent of your forces. And it kind of meters down and comes back up. And it wouldn't be meant to be something that you just sit and play. But I mean, you could sit and play any individual part of it and chop it up any way you wanted to. But it would be meant to so that like you could have this grand story, like all these lores and everything from all these stuff, and it could be 100% what you want, because the rules would be simple enough that like there are two types of soldiers. You break it down to close range people and long range people. And then you break down what constitutes a long range weapon, what constitutes a primitive, like a close range weapon. And then you just say, okay, so each one of these types of weapons are broken down into 3 tiers. Tier 1 is primitive. So you have like barbarian stuff, like stuff before the Middle Age. Tier 2 would be equivalent to like modern combat weapons. And then tier 3 would be sci-fi type stuff. And then what you would do is you take those tiers and apply them to the melee and the ranged units respectively. And that way you could mix and match the two. You could have a group of barbarians that use nothing but swords and axes and throwing spears in the same game as having their alien overlord boss that uses psychic powers and does ranged attacks, because the system would be modular enough to where as long as it fit within the mechanics that are provided, the fluff is what you want of it. And then you could have your own little,